Less than 1% of our population serves in the military, in the all-volunteer military. Although some volunteer out of a sense of patriotic duty, most join the military because it's the most viable option in the labor market. So less than 1% serve. That's an aggregate total of about 2.5 million people across all branches of service, including the National Guard and the Reserve. So, fewer than 500,000 women serve in the military. So what? Why should you care about the number of women who serve in today's military? Why should you care about the number of women who choose to serve in what we typically perceive as a rigid, male-oriented organization in this post-feminist era? Why should you consider letting your daughter serve in the military? Well, I'll tell you why. It's about service. The idea of service to country is something we see as traditionally masculine and dangerous. But to me, I think there's something truly special about women choosing to serve their country in this same time. I think the military will only continue to grow stronger as women continue to influence the structure and the growing force. Excuse me. And at the same time, I think women will benefit immensely from their service in the military, because I certainly did. So, why did I join the military? I joined for the money, okay? That was it. I was attending a state university that had a tuition waiver for members of the National Guard. So between the tuition waiver, the drill check for working 1 weekend a month, and an ROTC stipend, I made enough money to pay my way through college. It was pretty simple. I made a commitment that in exchange for my education, which meant a 6-year reserve obligation. My plan was to perform my obligation and get out. I'd actually counted out the number of days I would serve in uniform before I was done. It was a simple quid pro quo. That was it. But I stayed. I retired last year after 28 years of service as a commissioned officer. I spent a couple of years in the National Guard and the rest of the time in the Army Reserve. In those years, I've had many opportunities to live in the spaces in between what we perceive as a rigid structure of the Army and all the unique experiences and opportunities the military has to offer. Let me just flip over here. During my career, I deployed twice, once during the first Gulf War and a second time to Baghdad, Iraq in 2010. Before I tell you about deployment, I want to tell you about some of my experiences that helped develop my sense of service. Early in my career, I had the opportunity to travel to Honduras, South Korea, and Germany for military training exercises. What was particularly compelling about these exercises while I was still under my mandatory obligation? Well, each provided a short, vivid glimpse into what life was like in another country, whether that was through working with another colleague or a weekend off and a chance to travel, or sometimes it was just getting there. Each trip helped me to shape my understanding of service. Back in the 1980s and the early 1990s, the United States did a lot of exercises in Central America. The US Army, in particular the Guard and Reserve, were sent regularly to do humanitarian support missions in Central America. We were building roads, we were providing medical and dental services. We were trying to win the hearts and minds of the locals. We were trying to gain influence, our government was trying to gain influence in the region. I participated in Fuertes Caminos, or Strong Roads, which was an exercise in road building, and we provided maintenance support for the road engineers there. Now, I don't remember a whole lot about the work I did while I was there. But I do remember women washing their clothes in streams alongside the road as we drove our convoys through. I remember children begging for our MREs as we passed by. And I remember the nearly impassable roads we had to travel to get in and out. Ironic, since we were there for a road building exercise. I remember the poverty. For this exercise, I had a few weeks off from my civilian job so that I could perform my military training. That's the black and white of it. But the trip made me learn a lot more about Honduras and what was going on in our hemisphere, and what a little bit of our government, what a little bit of support from our government could do in another country. I started to think of the military as more than just rigid structure, formations, and uniforms. Moving on to South Korea. I made 2 trips to South Korea, one in 1987 and another in 1992. The country was in the throes of an amazing transformation. New construction popped up alongside of fields plowed by oxen. Shops were filled with clothing and shoes, all made in South Korea. There was a palpable energy there. We witnessed the economic engine of South Korea get started. It was pretty cool. At the same time, my understanding of service developed even further. South Korea has mandatory conscription, which means everybody has to serve in the military, as you know. And Korean Army life is much harsher than American Army life. But there is an opportunity for soldiers to compete to serve alongside us as Katusas, or Korean augmentees to the United States Army. So with good English skills and a little bit of luck in the lottery, a soldier has the opportunity to serve alongside the US in a US unit. So I came away with an understanding that people really wanted to be part of our military, that was something to be desired, and actually something that people would compete to do, which really didn't occur to me up until then. When I returned to South Korea in 1992, I had the unique opportunity to take a tunnel tour. Now, as you probably know, North Korea is divided from South Korea on the 38th parallel at the demilitarized zone. And there's a border there, and this picture on the left shows the building where you can kind of go into the DMZ and you can see the North Koreans. But the North Koreans over the years have built, or tried to build, a series of tunnels underneath the demilitarized zone as a way to help reunify the country. And so this is some of the artwork on this side that's in the tunnel. Now, maybe going to the DMZ isn't in the list of top 50 places to go before you die. You've been there. But it certainly makes an impression. In 1989, I went to Germany with Lon Delat, who was an ROTC cadet in the reserve unit at that time. He has manifested his gratitude to the United States through his service. It's a great story. The US Navy picked up Lon Delat and his family in 1981 when they escaped from Vietnam. And that's the USS Ranger, and they're being picked up in the South China Sea. He continued his military service, got a commission in the Army, and is actually on his way home from Afghanistan right now. So I think he's in Kuwait and is moving home now. So he has a fabulous attitude of service out of gratitude. Certainly he feels a debt to our country. But don't we all owe a little something back? Remember, less than 1% of the population has agreed to protect and defend the Constitution for the other 99% of the population. And of that less than 1%, fewer than 20% are women. Now, on to deployments. And for the sake of time and the quality of the photos available, I'll talk more about Iraq than about my first deployment. When I went to the first Gulf War, I wasn't leaving a husband and children behind. But 20 years later, I was married and I had a family. And my husband, Bob Hattan, is here today, and he also served in the military, so he had a good understanding of what he was getting into. And my daughter, Francesca, is in the back. She snuck in quietly, but she's here as well. So leaving a family behind is a little bit different. But deployments aren't based on your status as a parent or your availability or if you feel like going. They're based on the needs of the Army. So as a mother, unless you're pregnant or you've just given birth, you're expected to have a family care plan and you're expected to deploy. Pretty black and white. That's how it goes. But there are many shades of gray to consider as we prepare to leave our families. I felt much ambivalence about missing a chunk of time in my children's lives. Some friends and family asked if I could get out of it. But I never really considered it, even though I thought it's not a question they probably would have asked a man. That was my understanding of service. I'm well past mandatory obligation at this point when we're going to Iraq. Telling my kids I was going to go was hard enough. But to not deploy, well, that could have been even worse. When I competed for the command, I knew there was risk involved in terms of the unit could deploy. That's been the environment in our country for several years now. But to turn to my kids and not go, like I said, I thought would have been worse. We have to lead by example, especially at home. So how is service different during wartime? During training, we are fairly certain of the outcome. During war, not as much. So we embrace the uncertainty with additional training. We go off to the fight with the same joking and complaining that we shared during training. But there's an underlying somberness to it. We write our wills. We practice how to treat catastrophic injuries. We practice how to exit a vehicle from a rollover and come out shooting. We practice how to conduct a memorial service for a fallen comrade. We rely on the skills and abilities of those around us. In the absence of our regular family, they become our family. But our service goes beyond just performing our mission and rendering aid on the battlefield and all the things we kind of picture as what the military does. It's not just guys on patrol. While we were in Iraq, we naturalized 8 soldiers to become citizens on the 4th of July in 2010. And here's one of those 8 with the Vice President and General Odierno. And then we celebrated that event afterwards. It was a big deal. It wasn't like, yeah, okay, we're done. It was a big deal. And here's their party. We ran a special class to prepare young soldiers for the Warrior Leader course, which is a requirement for promotion into the non-commissioned officer ranks. We ran this class at night in addition to performing our mission, which we also did at night. So it was an additional burden on our staff to get these soldiers ready to be able to be promoted. Impact to Hero, a charity some of you may be familiar with, runs a 5K here in Sugar Land, has run a 5K for the last 7 years. And we did a shadow run, which is a run around the same place and time, same time, different place as they did. We participated in the Iraqi scouting program, which was a great outing on an occasional Saturday. And the list goes on. To me, service is an idea worth sharing, especially among women. The military presents challenges and opportunities to see life in many new and different ways. These challenges connect you to the broader world around you, and they help you find hidden strengths and unexpected views.